Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how is it going?
Tony, I'm slightly concerned I may develop pneumonia before the Rose Bowl after standing out in the rain and the wind and the cold. It's, the Southern California weather that you picture?
Oh, yeah.
It's like 25 to 30 degrees colder than that, and also rainy and also windy. Did I wear shorts and short sleeves to cover practice today? Listen, Tony, I don't think you need to blame the victim.
Tom, I don't know that you're necessarily you're the victim of your own circumstances, your own stupidity. I don't want to say stupidity, but I did. Yeah, Tom, I think what I'm learning is 75% of everything in Hollywood is fake.
I'm not sure where you get off, sir. I think we just need to do a gritty reboot of This Week again, and just keep it within the same cinematic universe, the Rose Bowl cinematic universe. But we're gonna reboot the series again,
right.
and this time it's gonna be sunny and warm.
Cast younger podcasters.
No, I think those roles are still.
So, Tom, what have we done today? Today is, and this is legitimately, I do have to. It's Wednesday, I believe, because
It is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. We talked with the Ohio State offense today, which consisted of Kevin Wilson, C.J. Stroud, Travion Henderson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jeremy Ruckert, Thayer Munford, and is that everybody?
I think so.
That was 6 people, right?
Yes, I think you got it, bro.
And then also the Utah defensive coordinator and some defensive players, including Clark Phillips, former Ohio State cornerback commit. And then you went to your Wet and Wild practice, and I decided not to. I stayed back to work. But, Tom, it didn't sound like there was anything all of that interesting at practice other than confirmation of what we already knew, which was also why we still needed to go to practice.
Correct. There were the same number of people at practice on Wednesday as there were on Tuesday. I'm going to give credit to our friend Dan Hope of Alarm Warriors, who was the crazy person who sat and counted the number of people and came up with 63. And there were, once again, 63 people at practice on Wednesday. I asked an Ohio State spokesman earlier in the day, is there any chance that anyone else, hypothetically, one of these other guys, is there someone who might be in, say, kind of a COVID quarantine that might be able to show up later in the week? They said no, they were not anticipating anyone else. So what you see is what you get, and what you see is 63 guys, which is, that's like an FCS roster. That's not an FBS. That's not an FBS size roster. It's real unusual to be in that kind of a spot. This is a weird confluence of events, I think, where you've got some opt-outs, you've got some guys who are sick, you've got some guys who are hurt, but here they are, and they're a little shorthanded.
And I believe the 63 is just scholarship players.
Correct.
So
yes, correct. Yes.
There are guys like Xavier Johnson or Toby Wilson or those kind of guys who have been around. Not Toby Wilson, but he's been running with the 2s and 3s. Like, they could call upon him. Xavier Johnson, they could, if they needed to use him in whatever role, he could step in, and certainly you see him on special teams. So they do have more than 63, and they've got guys that have been running on scout teams and repping here and there that they can turn to. It doesn't sound like they will be turning to Chris Olave, though. I know that there's some maybe glimpses of hope or whatever, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be anything. And again, he's just doing some individual work, doing some reps here and there, but just really, it's what we said last night. He's there to help lead a team that is missing a bunch of people, a bunch of leaders, and there's no reason to get upset about that. And he's not harming anybody by being here. He's not somebody didn't get left home because of him. It's going to be okay. Talk to the and I wish I could remember the defensive coordinator's name at this moment. Do you remember, Tom?
Andy Ludwig was the offensive coordinator.
I could look it up, and I should have rememorized it.
You have your phone literally sitting right in front of you.
Right, but I'm also using it. But anyway, we talked to him at Scally, Brendan, no, something Scally. I'm not
Scallywag.
No, I'm not going to do it. But I asked him, does the defensive coordinator breathe a sigh of relief when you see guys, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave opting out? And he said, no, not with everything else they have.
Yeah.
And that's something we really haven't gotten too much into what to expect from those guys, and we will do that more. We will eventually tomorrow. We're gonna do our live bold predictions. We are trying to figure out what's gonna happen Friday, but we could be doing something live then, and of course the pregame show that we will have. We'll talk more about it, but right now it is Julian Fleming running for Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison running at X for Garrett Wilson. Then, of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba still in the slot, and that's what they're going to do right now. And I'm trying to figure out how to go about my bold predictions, because I could just do 5 with what's going to happen to wide receiver just because it's fun.
Yeah, it's just this is new and exciting, and you've got new guys who you've heard a lot about, and you haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of on the field. So that should actually be pretty interesting. That's kind of been one of our themes this week is. Yeah, it's kind of the end of the 2021 season, but also kind of the start of the 2022 season. So it should actually be a lot of fun to see those guys out there and see them get a chance to shine. And Utah's a little banged up at cornerback, so you may have some opportunities there. Clark Phillips, who you mentioned earlier, is the slot corner. He and Jackson Smith-Njigba are probably going to be going head-to-head. Those were 2 guys who were classmates in that 2020 Ohio State recruiting class until they weren't. So that'll be kind of a fun matchup to watch. Jackson Smith-Njigba did say he is staying in the slot. There was some thought, maybe he kicks outside somewhere else and they have Emeka Egbuka play in the slot. Sounds like Jackson Smith-Njigba stays in the slot. You have, as you said, Fleming at the X, Marvin Harrison at the Z, and these are guys who you've been hearing about for a long time. These are guys who are going to have to be a part of the 2022 Ohio State team, a big part of that 2022 Ohio State team, if they're going to get back to the beat Michigan Big Ten Championship college football playoff level again. So now you're going to get a little bit of a sneak preview of them before spring ball.
I asked Kevin Wilson, is there some sort of, what's your level of excitement about seeing the young guys? And he flipped it on me and talked about the level of excitement that the receivers are going to have, that they're going to need to tone it down. And I wrote about that today, where this is going to be their biggest moment ever. They're going to be relied upon more than ever, and they have to handle it, and they can't. He's like, when you get into the bright lights or whatever, it's the Rose Bowl, you start, you squeeze down on the football harder, you do this, you do that, and you're not doing what you're accustomed to doing. So you got to let the game come to you. And then I said, well, do you build it into the game plan early on? Like, maybe try not to put these guys in positions where they do that. Like try to be safe or something. And he said, no, because you want to start out as fast as you always do. Because Rutgers, sorry,
Utah, the Rutgers of the West.
Same difference, yes. Utah has this offense that can control the ball, can control the clock, and you have to be as aggressive as you normally would be, because you may not get the ball back, and so you want to make the most of it. You can't just walk into things. You got to go running, and so that'll be fun to watch. They're going to continue to attack, and it reminds me of what they did with Julian Fleming in the Big Ten Championship game last year. On like the first 2 drives, he had 4 catches. Then nothing else after that, but started out aggressive, and then I think Justin Fields got hurt, his hand hurt, and then that was about it. But you're gonna, maybe it's one of those things where you just go right at them, in terms of right at the receivers, to maybe wake them up. It's like a splash of water in bed when you're running late for school.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's sort of similar to what you do with a young quarterback, where it's like give him an easy throw to make to just get him in the game a little bit, so you're not throwing a 60-yard bomb the first time out. You're going to give him an easy throw, and then let the receiver kind of make a play. I'm sure it's going to be kind of the same thing with the wide receivers. Give him something that's not super complicated. Give him a rub route where you've maybe got a little bit more space. Just get him in the game a little bit. And the interesting thing about this Ohio State offense is, there's 2 new wide receivers who've never started a game before, right? Never started, or did Julian Fleming start that?
He started the Big Ten, and he also started once this year when Olave was out.
Yeah, so but has not had a lot of action in his career. it's like, well, okay, certainly they can rely on the other veteran players on the offense, such as the redshirt freshman quarterback, or the true freshman running back, or I mean, the real veteran is the true sophomore wide receiver in the slot.
Exactly, and when I wrote about what these receivers haven't done, all these young guys are going to have to step up. I had to include Jackson Smith-Njigba because this is the biggest thing. Like, I mean, where he is the guy, and against Michigan he had help, but this is his biggest moment, and I expect him to be fine. Kevin Wilson expects him to be fine. He is as even keeled, like he has balance like an 8-legged cat. It's like double the balance of a regular cat.
That's cat's famously pretty good balance.
Mm-hmm. And this is double.
That's so. As long as it doesn't negate itself, that's going to be. That's going to be great.
It'd be funny if they're like 8-legged cat, like can't even walk in a straight line.
Well, or if the 4 legs were on the bottom and 4 legs are on the top, and a cat always lands on its feet, it's like, but which feet?
This is like when you butter both sides of the bread when you drop it.
Julian Fleming's biggest game this year: 2 catches, 22 yards. Longest catch of the year, 17 yards. That was against Nebraska, and you could add on a 30-something yard pass that was like that was probably a catch that didn't end up counting as a catch, but he 2 years into his career, 14 catches, 125 yards, 1 touchdown, and 8.9 yards per catch. Only touchdown he has scored was against Michigan State, and I think coming into his career, I'm sure he was thinking he was going to be much more on the Jackson Smith-Njigba track than the track he's ended up on, but a lot of that's been injury related, and he's constantly been. It's just been like, oh, now there's a hamstring. Oh, now there's something else. Oh, well, he's finally better enough, well enough to potentially play. Oh, well, now it's raining at Indiana. We don't want to have him do this on this wet turf. Like, it's just kind of like constantly not quite happened for him. Generally, I think pretty much all through no fault of his own. So this would be, this is a real opportunity for him going into an off season, with the transfer portal. If a guy's frustrated, you always kind of wonder, hey, is this going to potentially lead to a transfer? This is an opportunity to really have a little bit of a statement game. If he puts up, 6 catches and 80 yards and maybe scores a touchdown in the Rose Bowl, it's like, okay, like he's probably going into the offseason feeling very different than he might be right now.
Tom, I know what you just did there by saying 6 catches for 80 yards, thinking that it's all that impressive. So when you try to make a bold prediction of 8 catches for 96 yards, I'm not having it. So just so you know, I already see what you're doing. I appreciate the game, but it's not going to happen. The thing about like Julian Fleming next year could still be his contract here, because you look at what Chris Olave was able to do. You look at what all 3 of these starters were able to do. He does something like that, he's going to have a decision to make, because I'm sure he's going to be really good in the combine setting. And you're a guy who has had injuries the past 2 years. Do you get out as quickly? And I don't even know why we're talking about this at this point, but do you get out as quickly as possible, or do you go an extra year to prove that your junior year was not a fluke? And I think he has all of the reason to be incredibly excited about next year, and this is the opportunity. This is the first game of the 2022 season for him, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, even Jaden Ballard. I don't expect Jaden Ballard to really get into it too much unless it's kind of a blowout, and even then, at that point, you're just going to be blocking as Kyle McCord hands the ball off. But that would be a crazy blowout in this game when everybody is expecting something different. So, the receivers, that's going to be fun to watch. C.J. Stroud, I assume he'll be fine with that. And were you with him today at all, or that
not
was Kevin?
Really. Kevin was with C.J. Stroud a good bit today. I spent a lot of time with Jackson Smith-Njigba. And he was talking a lot about kind of having to take over as sort of the leader of, hey, guess what, you're the veteran now, good luck. And I think having Chris Olave there is definitely a little bit of a transitional thing. And someone asked him, so is there a chance, like the old Dumb and Dumbers, so you're telling me there's a chance, and it was like, so is there a chance that he changed his mind and he didn't like rule it out that Chris Olave could change his mind and play? I don't think anyone's expecting it, but it would not be the single greatest shock. It would be a lot more surprising if Garrett Wilson suddenly showed up and played as opposed to Chris Olave. So, Yeah, I don't think that's a total would be a total shock. This is an interview setting where you got 30 minutes with these guys, and sometimes you can go up and there's no one at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to talk to Jackson Smith-Njigba about a story I've been wanting to work on for quite a while, which is he has an older brother named Kade Smith-Njigba, who's a minor leaguer in the Pittsburgh Pirates system, an outfielder, and just got added to the 40-man roster for the Pirates, which, if you don't know baseball, basically means like you're not in the major leagues yet, but the Pirates have officially said, like, okay, you're kind of in that next group that is not major leaguers. So talked to him about his brother, and he played baseball. Jackson Smith-Njigba played baseball up to 8th grade. His brother played football up to high school and then stopped and kind of focused on baseball. I said, were you a better football player, or was he a better baseball? Or were you a better baseball player, or is he a better football player? And he thought for a minute. He's like, I don't think he's going to like this, but I was a better baseball player. So he did say they did have a little bit of a friendly competition. Which one of them is going to make the majors first, majors / NFL first? So his dad was a college football player. So this is not a normal thing in a family to have two guys who could potentially be at that level. And he said his dad was a college football player, so that's at least where some of the genes come from. But he said he worked both of those guys out pretty hard as kids, and get the genes, put in the hard work, and ta-da, here you are.
Jackson Smith-Njigba is like the quietest, most humble guy. But anytime you ask him, are you better than somebody, it is always, yes, I am better than that person. And that's Garrett Wilson. That's his older brother playing a different sport. No matter what it is. Jackson, say you and Jerry Rice are in your primes. Who do you think is better? And he'd be like, well, I'd have to say myself. Mm-hmm. And then be really polite about it. And then you're like, thank you for your answer. I love the honesty. And was there a day this year where he scored a touchdown and his brother hit a home run?
I don't think so, because the minor league season, I think, ended a little bit early this year. I feel like.
That ends in.
It might have gone a little longer, but he was. It didn't go too far into the football season.
Yeah, so. But it's because you follow the parents, and there's always some retweet of Kanan hitting a home run or making a catch or whatever. So that's interesting. He's cold-blooded on the field, and then any comparison you want to make, yes. Do you know more about science than say, I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson? Well, with all due respect, Mr. Tyson, yes, I'm probably the most sciencey person I know.
His tweets about science are less weird than Neil deGrasse Tyson, so he's got that going for him.
I also asked Kevin Wilson, is Jackson going to be in a slot next year? And he's like, I haven't even thought about it. Yeah. So they'll have to figure all of that out.
Another thing about next year that we need to figure out is Kade Stover. That was there's a lot of like, yeah, man, we'll get there when we get there. We're not there yet. Kade Stover, once again at practice today, was wearing the white jersey on defense, number 5. They just need an extra body at linebacker right now. What Kevin Wilson said about it was, yes, they need, they feel better about tight end right now at the moment in terms of depth than they do the linebacker room, because you have Jeremy Ruckert, you've got Mitch Rossi. You talked about Joe Royer having really come along now, where Joe Royer is now maybe in that kind of circle of trust, and he can be that third tight end. So you can move Kade Stover over there and be a little bit more of a Sam linebacker, which is not something they're necessarily going to use full-time next year in that 4-2-5 defense. But when you're playing a team like Utah, or potentially a team like Wisconsin or Michigan or someone like that, you may see that on the field. So against Utah, they're going to need a Sam linebacker, and so it may be him. But as far as next year goes for Kade Stover, Kevin Wilson said, at some point you kind of have to make a decision and let the guy just be where he is, so he can develop. You can't just he said it's great to have the attitude, whatever's best for the team, but at some point you also have to do what's best for the kid. Mm-hmm. That you can't just be ping-ponging people around. You've got to let them develop in one spot. So sounds like this spring, once they get through the offseason, once they get through the bowl game, get into January, so they're going to start having conversations about that and figure out what the final answer is there.
Yeah, Kevin Wilson said Kade Stover now having the better understanding of what the tight ends do kind of even helps him on defense. And they've had some playful back and forths during practice, watching each other, and maybe like not cussing each other out or anything like that, but just playful jabs during practice between Kevin Wilson and Kade Stover, according to Wilson. But yeah, the Joe Royer thing, because it almost feels like Joe Royer has allowed this to happen as much as Kade Stover, because Joe Royer has stepped up through the course of bowl practice, and that's even though Kade Stover played defense against Michigan, but this has been coming on. And talked to Jeremy Ruckert about him, and he said Royer has finally fully embraced what it means to be an Ohio State tight end, and
blocking. He means blocking.
the glory that comes from it, and understanding that, look, once you become an Ohio State tight end and you start to make it on the field, people are going to notice you. You will not be able to walk down the street. Tom, that takes a lot to process, to fully come to terms with, to know that you will not be able to walk into, say, Build-A-Bear. And people won't be like, oh my gosh, you're an Ohio State tight end. So now he understands that. And with NIL, I mean, shoot, this is the time. If you want to make money, Tom, you go to Ohio State to play tight end because of all the NIL stuff, because you are so recognizable.
And, the nice thing is if you do walk into Build-A-Bear and have people recognize you, as an Ohio State tight end, you know that no one's going to be throwing bears at you. So that's good. I mean, that's a very positive of the situation. So
and what Wilson said, like, Joe Royer is probably the actual number 2 tight end. Mitch Rossi is still like the fullback number 2. It just depends on what they want to do with it. And then, of course, T. Scott is still continuing to work. But, yeah.
And Mitch Rossi could be back next year. That was another little nugget of information.
I think everybody at Ohio State wants Mitch Rossi to be back. And Mitch sounds like he would be willing to do it if the right grad program is around. But it's funny how it's a thankless position. And then it's like, but Mitch, hear us out. We're also going to want you to do some fullback stuff, where the real appreciation is. It's like, I know you're not going to throw me the ball, but now you're asking me to do fullback stuff too. That just tells you how the kind of person, the kind of player Mitch Rossi is. Because even talking to him, was it this year or last year, where it's like, but you're a fullback, right? It's like, yeah, I'm a fullback.
Yeah.
It's like, can we call you a fullback? Do you want? It's whatever. But yeah, I'm a fullback.
Yeah, and that's just, if you're going to get into the fullback line of work, that's sort of a prerequisite. Is like you can't be in the fullback. No one gets into the fullback game for the money or the fame. Like it is fullback is like the most love of the game position that there is, I think. And if this is your opportunity to play football one more year and maybe chase another championship and try and end your career with a win over Michigan in a Big Ten championship and college football playoff and all the other stuff that could be on the table next year, like. And maybe get some grad school paid for too. Like that's. I was talking to an athlete in a different sport pretty recently, and they said, the COVID year, the extra COVID year that they got, it's like, I mean, it's great. Now I know not only have my undergrad degree, I'm leaving with a master's, and it's all paid for. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's.
I'm just thinking, like, Mitch Rossi is going to play 4 years for Bill Belichick, and just. He is the fullback, because you're not going to be a 5'11", 6-foot tight end, but he can do some unique things, and I wouldn't be surprised if he spends like one off season also becoming a long snapper to become even to add more. But it's like, it wouldn't shock me to see him find a niche somewhere. Just, I'm sure he's thinking about life after football, but he's a Bill Belichick kind of guy. Like, yes, I will do whatever you ask, just pay for my schooling.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What is going on behind us as
hi guys,
Kevin Newman entered the studio, the podcast studio, knowing the record was. Did you not put on the recording live?
There's a sock on the doorknob. I don't know how he doesn't understand what that means.
So, did you see Kevin Wilson talking about the 4 tackles on the offensive line and how? It got tweeted out about how they had to keep them here and keep them happy, and that created a kind of storm, Tom, that is only reserved for Twitter and message boards, and it goes back to coddling players and keeping them happy, and it goes against what Tony Alford had told us years ago. But the thing is, like, if those are your 4-5 best, and DeJuan Jones has played pretty well, and it has worked out better than the alternative, because the alternative, I know everybody likes Matt Jones, but even Kevin Wilson said he's not. There are issues with him at times in practice, and when you have issues in practice and other people are practicing better than you, then they're going to play. That's how this works, and so that created some uproar. And I don't know. Are you furious?
Am I online? No, we're doing this in person, so I'm not online. So I'm not mad right now. If I was
Can you
online,
at least type angrily while you
if
talk?
I was online, I would be just, dear sir.
One finger typing. I like it. That's how the angry people.
First
do it.
of all, how dare you? The Matt Jones comment was interesting because I was standing there for that because I was kind of wandering from table to table and so I picked up bits and pieces of everyone, but I was there when he said that, and I was trying to get in a follow up on that because he basically said consistency of practice. Consistency of effort in practice, I think, was what he said for Matt Jones, was kind of the issue. And, after he said that, it struck me. It feels like we're hearing about that more now than we have in the past. Consistency of effort in practice. And I wondered if that was a function of, well, number one, is that just my imagination, or is that true? Number two, if it is true, is that a function of the coaches being more willing to talk about it right now? Or is that a function of just, there are more guys on this year's team who don't have that consistent practice effort? Because this is not a new thing, guys not being consistent in practice. This is something coaches have talked about forever in kind of general terms. You just haven't heard it specifically, either coaches talking about it directly or just sort of you hear like, why is this guy not playing this week? Well, consistency of effort in practice. So that was something that I wanted to follow up with him on, and then the conversation went a different direction, and then they ran out of time.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, I definitely agree with you. It's been something this year because when guys suddenly don't play or appear on the unavailable list, and you're like, is this an effort thing?
Yeah.
Because it's not just coming out now. It's like you wondered, let's see, is this COVID, is this injury, or is this punishment? And you never really knew which of the three, because there were, like, I'm not saying there were rumors about players or whatever, but there was enough of the Seven Banks thing. Not that Matt Jones was being punished, but like the practice thing has been his bugaboo for last year, and this is something that we've known about it, but it's not necessarily the effort. It was just like makes some mistakes in practice, but the effort this year has been it's been several guys. And that's a good question. Are they just more willing to talk about it? I don't know the answer to that. And you wonder why the lack of effort. Also, is it the same? Is there more lack of effort, Tom? Is it because of last year? I keep saying last year is going to continue to have reverberations that we don't even understand yet, or don't even know, to attribute them to something like this, or is it one of those things where you just attribute that to everything as a catch-all, even though it may have nothing to do with it.
Right. It's just like saying, why is something not happening? Just say supply chain issues. Like that's okay. Just like sure, okay. I have answered your question.
That's why Ohio State had to play 4 tackles instead of 2 guards.
Supply chain issues.
Yes.
So all the guards are stuck in a boat in the harbor in LA. Yeah, it's very sad. There's just so many variables to this year and last year. I mean, you got the pandemic, and then the weird off seasons, and the lack of training, and just the irregular schedules, and no one could get in a rhythm last year. And then you've got NIL, and and you've got the growth and the explosive growth of the transfer portal, and I mean all those things. It's like you've introduced all these different variables all at once, and it's like, which one would you like to attribute this to? Would you like to attribute it to the inconsistency of practice and the lack of contact in a lot of practice last year because of the COVID? Like, sure. And now this year, well, it's not quite as intense as it was 2 years ago because these, half of this year's team or more wasn't here in 2019, so they don't remember that, they don't know that, and they don't know what that really is supposed to look like. Okay, you can attribute it to that. Do you want to attribute it to the players having more agency because now that I have NIL, like I have now, is that you can also say is this the entitlement of the players and the entitlement of today's youth, and you can say the lack of character of today's youth because they all want to get in the portal the first time they drop a pass or the first time they get benched or whatever, and all of these things change basically at the same time. So it's impossible to sort of filter out which one of these things is the actual root cause here. And the answer is probably some combination of those three and also 7 other things that I'm not thinking of right now. But that did strike me as just, I don't know if, I wouldn't necessarily assume that the coaches are just more openly speaking about it, because if you're going to speak about something openly and you know it's going to upset potentially someone, you would think now they would be going out of the way to not do that. So it just struck me as that was just an interesting question that I didn't get a chance to get answered today.
The entitlement, we'll wrap up here. The entitlement thing, the transfer portal, I don't think some of it's not entitlement, some of it's just opportunity. And Kirk Herbstreit talked about that today, where if he would have had the transfer portal, he would have left. And that's not entitlement, that's opportunity. Like, they couldn't go anywhere. Like, they could transfer, but you'd have to sit, and it just really wasn't done as much. And now that there are more opportunities for everything, and you can do what you want, and that gives some players some power, and then does that allow the coaches to be a little bit more honest about the players? And hey, we're all big boys now, so here's how it goes. And I think coaches being honest is fine. They're not tearing anybody down. Like, saying somebody has had effort issues, I mean, is it the worst thing? Like, you're still trying to motivate players,
right? You can't coddle them. That's the balance. Is you're not trying to chase them off, but also you can't coddle them, because if you coddle them, they never get better. That's a difficult balance to strike, and you have to get pushed. Like, that's the whole off-season weightlifting program is you're getting pushed to do stuff you didn't think you could do, and it's not always going to be fun, and it's not always going to be easy, and that's just, if you want to play, and if you get to the point where you're playing football at this level, you have done a lot of hard work to get to this point. This is not new stuff for you. So yeah, there's a lot of it may surprise you to learn, Tony, that there's a lot of oversimplification going on in some of these online arguments or surrounding these issues. But the issues may be slightly more varied and nuanced than you can fit into 140 characters.
The irony is you've got the excellence demanders, the toughness demanders, who want Matt Jones out there because the offensive line, they see it as tougher and better when he's out there. But also, if he's the one that's playing, it's a little bit because he's being coddled, because he's not being held to the standard that everybody else is, and he's being allowed to be a little bit worse than everybody else, and he's playing because they don't want him to leave or don't want him to be upset. And it's an interesting juxtaposition there. Tom, anything else before we go? And I've got to come up with some outstanding bold predictions, because I'm going to have to carry that show.
Anyway, my first bold prediction is Tony does not carry the show tomorrow. Hey, look at me, I'm 1 for 1. We have to figure out what our schedule is. We have an event we've got to cover kind of in the middle of the day, but we'll try and let you know when we're going to do that, because we do want to do a live stream. We got, for some unknown reason, everyone wants us to do that as a live show, because live shows are always a little bit of a gong show, and then the bold prediction shows are always even more of a gong show. So if you combine the two, maybe the gong cancels out, and it's just like, wow, what a smooth, well-produced show that was.
I don't think that's going to happen, Tom. It's going to be very much different than the professionalism of our recorded shows. So I can't wait to see how it goes. That will then do it. Since Tom is done, I am also done. I want to thank you all for tuning in. It has been a fun couple of days here in Los Angeles, and it will continue to be a fun couple of days as we lead into the Rose Bowl. So thanks for sticking around, and we will talk to you guys later.